After detailed evaluations, we have found that because of the fundamental vehicle architecture choices made at its concept stage, the use of the heritage-based subsystems with proven track records, and the intense involvement of the experienced NASA safety design professionals, the Ares 1 and the Orion offer the basis for a high degree of inherent safety. In fact, they're being designed to provide a tenfold improvement over the safety of any existing vehicles. In our opinion, such inherent safety simply cannot be taken as a given in possible alternative launchers, as some would like to be the case. As we have already been quoted a couple of times today from our 2009 report, we believe that to abandon Ares 1 as a baseline vehicle for any alternative without demonstrated capability nor proven superiority or even equivalence is unwise and probably not cost-effective. We are aware that commercial entities hope to provide safe and low-cost access to orbit in the future, and we look forward to their innovations. We do support their work. But we must point out that NASA has not yet even established what the safety requirements for these commercial providers will be. The potential safety of these alternatives cannot be evaluated until the safety requirements, such as the acceptable risk level for loss of crew, are established, and the proposed designs are evaluated against them. Our bottom line safety recommendation is to not abandon the progress already made on the program of record before determining if the alternatives can provide equal or better safety for our astronauts. My third topic concerns the workforce. NASA has developed detailed transition plans that carefully map the skills and the funding streams to move from the shuttle operation to the Ares Orion development. If a major change in the mission of these workers is the path that is chosen, it's imperative that a new plan be developed quickly to clearly show these workers their place in the new vision. Otherwise, we face a risk of loss of the key personnel that are essential to space-safe flight. Finally, I must report to you that we are seeing examples of facility degradation which concern us across NASA. Adequate funding for NASA facilities and infrastructure must be considered on an even ground with the more visible missions that come out of these facilities. In conclusion, Madam Chair, the ASAP believes that America's human spaceflight program stands at a critical juncture today. Choices made today will impact the safety of astronauts for at least a generation to come. Safety must be an inherent part of the vehicles that we use to launch those astronauts. It cannot simply be added on after the fact. Just as importantly, the resources provided to NASA must be consistent with whatever mission they are assigned, and both the resources and the mission must be kept stable. Asking NASA to attempt too much, too fast, with too little can only lead to danger and to disappointment. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you or the other members may have.
I'm going to turn to Senator Shelby to ask his questions. He has many duties also related to the financial services.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Frost, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here, but more than that, we appreciate your background and your statement. The future of human spaceflight is being proposed to be given, as I understand it, to companies that have never launched humans before. That's disturbing to me because your own panel for years has advised that they're not ready. If there is substantial risk in relying on unproven commercial providers to put our astronauts in orbit, do you have a suggestion on how to reduce that risk?
The risk that the panel sees is principally the unknown nature of their abilities. Mm-hmm. If we bet our entire future on those as yet unproven abilities, there is risk that they may not pan out. A common method of handling that kind of risk is hedging your bet. Or as one member of the Augustine panel, I believe, was quoted as saying, if it's a horse race, bet on the field, and then you can pick the winner a little later. So keeping redundant capabilities and not being single-string dependent can greatly reduce that risk. There is a cost to that.
A big cost, though, isn't it?
That's right.
Do you believe that NASA should relinquish its role in ensuring safety through rigorous testing during development and production if NASA were to allow their astronauts to fly on any spacecraft, commercial or otherwise?
At the current time, for NASA to put its employees, its astronauts, on board something as potentially hazardous as a rocket ship, they're going to have a robust program to check its safety. There may come a day when it becomes as routine as a commercial airline. That day is far away, in my personal opinion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Well, let's get right to this whole issue of going commercial. There is an inherent tension here between boldness and innovation and looking, because technology moves fast in its development, much faster than government contracts and procurement. But at the same time, we're not sending cases of Tang into space. We're sending our astronauts and the astronauts from other countries. They rely on us. So here goes the question. On page 3 of your testimony, you say, "We have not evaluated their proposals and cannot comment on their eventual safety." Here's the key point. However, we must point out that NASA has not yet established any safety requirements for their commercial providers. Now, as you recall, in my questions to General Bolden, I said, is there going to be a single standard? He told me yes. Then he told me that they have this manual that they've either developed or are in the process of completing. I'm confused. Is there a standard? Is there not a standard? Is there a manual? Could you share with us your comments on this?
Yes, I'll be happy to. My understanding is, and we have been briefed and evaluated this very carefully, that NASA does have a human rating, NPR it's called. It was recently updated in 2008. It specifically did not address and exempted commercial providers. It was aimed at the type of program where NASA manages the hardware. And that's critical, because the way you state and explain and track the safety requirements depends on the kind of program it is. If you're buying a taxi ride, you have a different set of requirements than if you were developing a taxi. So that was exempted. The ASAP made that a primary recommendation for, I think, about 2 years, that section of the standard be built out so that the people trying to develop commercial vehicles knew what to aim for. General Bolden has taken the initiative to make that a priority. The current estimate is that some type of standard for those commercial providers will be available by the end of 2010, setting the requirements.
So if, in fact, you say to these bold, innovative companies that we are now betting the future of our astronauts going to the space station on a low orbit, there is going to be a safety standard, but we won't have it complete till 2010?
That's the current estimate. That's correct. And I might point out that that's the hardware requirements. Then we need a set of processes that will take longer. Those processes depend on how much knowledge we have of the provider. If we don't have much insight into how they develop their rocket ship, if you will, then we will need very extensive testing and verifications. And that process will take longer, in my opinion, than 2010.
So then there's the processes. Now, there is the hope that that they will be ready to go in 3 years. That's all part of the glitz and the glory that we're hearing about, that they're going to be ready to go in 3 years. When I'm looking at the development of the shuttle, we have followed the development of the shuttle together. Senator Shelby and I came to the Congress and have worked together since we came. And the shuttle had problems. But remember, the shuttle was going to go 100 flights, and it was going to be, like the Greyhound bus to wherever we wanted to go. Now what I'm saying, though, is if, in fact, the safety manual is not done to 2010, and those processes that are really mandatory, usual, and customary, then how could a commercial vehicle, just getting what they need to know and the standards, be able to meet a 3-year time frame? Do you think that's realistic?
I'm not privy to the development schedule of the COTS folks. That sounds highly optimistic to me.
And I'm not trying to pin you down. I'm trying to get your experience.
My experience would be that that's going to be a tough schedule to meet. And one safety concern that drives our panel is that they're designing parts of those vehicles today. There are engineers at tables picking safety factors and design features that may or may not comply with the requirements that will be developed later in the year, in which case we'll either have to accept the risk or step back and redesign. Both involve risk.
So they're designing today without having the firmness and the definite nature of NASA standards.
That's correct. They're attempting to design to what they think the standards will be. And if they're right, then we'll be in good shape, and if they're wrong, then we'll have difficulty.